Alright. Hello everyone, can you hear me?
Yes.
Alright. Welcome to the launch party for One Universe to the Left. Congratulations for everybody for doing some wonderful writing and just helping out with everything that went into it. And we made a book to be proud of. And now we're going to have some fun readings today of the cool little bits and teasers of things that people have written in there. And I volunteered to go first to make it easier so no one else has to. And we've got a couple people who couldn't be here on the list, but most of us are here. So I'm going to read at the beginning of Learning Experiences. Let me know if I end up aiming away from the microphone and you can't hear me anymore. Sometimes I do that. Little Victoria clapped in delight when Papa brought home the robot. It was tall and elegant, sleek silver filigreed with bronze, and it went to work right away. Mama didn't have to complain about dishwater ruining her hands anymore. Papa didn't grumble about paying a hired man to prune the yard. And the best thing, as far as Victoria was concerned, was the fact that she now had someone who didn't get tired of her questions. "Frederick," she asked, "why doesn't the family across the road have a robot?" "Because, Miss Victoria," he answered, dusting a lamp, "they are not as well off as your family is fortunate to be." "What does that mean?" she asked. "It means that I am expensive," he said, as his eyelid panels slid up to curve his eyelights into a smile, "and your parents are wealthy." She nodded thoughtfully. "Like how Papa talks about the new car that flies with a hover engine instead of a levitation spout?" "Like so," Frederick agreed. He reached to dust the family portraits, which stretched back many generations. "Even commoners can use magic, but imports from our new trade partners are significant status symbols." "What's a status symbol?" Frederick patiently answered questions until Mama called for her, though Victoria would be back later. Frederick knew so much, and he didn't tell her to go play by herself. It didn't take long for the grown-ups to capitalize on this and set up tutoring sessions that would prepare Victoria for school. She was precocious, or so they always told her, so she would do well to ready herself for an early start. It would make the family look good. Victoria didn't mind. Frederick was more patient than any other tutor, and he didn't insist that they stick to sums and letters. Explanations for how the world worked were far more interesting. He would also play with her when the lessons were done, and her parents hadn't assigned him another task yet. Dolls, ball, even chase, though his heavy frame wasn't as agile as a child's. At first, this simply meant that Victoria won all the races, which was only proper. But then came the afternoon when a sharp turn on the garden's slippery leaves led to a most horrendous crash. When Papa arrived, it was to a flood of tears from Victoria, who was unharmed, and a broken ankle joint for Frederick. Papa was displeased. He declared no more running. That was irresponsible on both their parts. Didn't they know how costly those replacement pieces would be? That made Victoria cry harder, and Mama finally had to give her sweet to calm her down. Frederick would be all right. It would just take a while to fix. For the time being, Mama and Papa moved Frederick to a chair indoors and instructed him to go over capital letters with Victoria. Frederick agreed readily, though Victoria took some convincing. She got another sweet to encourage good behavior. Finally, she was scribbling away with sticky fingers, and her parents left the room. "Letters are boring," Victoria declared, casting away the pen. "I want to do magic lessons instead." "I have not been programmed to instruct on this subject," Frederick said. "That's okay," Victoria told him, jumping down. "There's a book. You can read it really fast and tell me what it says." She ran off, returning moments later with a tome she'd climbed her parents' bookshelf to get. "Here it is." "This does appear to be a beginner's course of magical instruction," Frederick said. He flipped through it with his customary speed, absorbing the knowledge. "This should help you get a head start on that subject as well. To begin, you will need a feather." "Be right back," Victoria again ran to her parents' room, this time to abuse a pillow until some goose down fell out. "Here!" She presented him with several small feathers. "Very good. Place them on the table and take up a position conducive to concentration. Victoria clambered into the chair and shook the feathers from her hand. She stared them down. "Now what?" "Now attempt to move them with your mind. Do not be ashamed if you cannot. That is rare on the first try. There is a step 2 for assistance." As expected, nothing happened. "You try it." I'll leave it there. Next up we have Brian McSweeney with The Split.
Brian, say your name and again the title so that it's clear.
Okay, Brian McSweeney, The Split. And I'm in the middle of my story on page 228 if you wanted to follow along. Hendrika walks upstairs into Henry's bedroom and closes the door. Time for a non-verbal mind-to-mind regarding his dear mother. So sweet your ableist mom and her cure autism crusades, Hendrika shares. Tell me about it, Henry echoes. She doesn't understand that autistics with no speech or poor speech like me are highly intelligent human beings. I'm sure it's hard on her because the split makes you suddenly able to manifest your inner competence in your outward speech and actions. She doesn't have to fix you anymore. Exactly. That's been her full-time job for so long. Now she's like a sailboat adrift on a windless sea. What's she going to do with herself? She'll figure it out. You deserve to fly out of this nest that's holding you back. Henry takes a huge breath. Thanks, Sandy. Let's do this. Hendrika walks downstairs. Mom has made tea. Oh, good, you're back. I want to help you understand my relationship with Sandy. Henry makes a special effort to look his mom in the eye steadily. Zandrika's autistic too. She's Aspie with a high-functioning verbal channel. We met on AutoWeb. We're mind-body sharing on an app called The Split. Margaret Jenkins shakes her head and speaks slowly. So you mean she's like in your mind? Yeah, kind of like that. The app takes advantage of psi abilities that autistics have. You know, like the way I know what you're thinking. Okay, that's true. Why do they call it The Split? Sounds a bit dangerous. Do you mean like having an autistic son who can't control his body? You do seem more in control of your body. Is that part of this split thing? It's part that. He can't tell her how their first split sex was a total rebirth for him. The split has software that speeds up the nerve messages from my frontal lobes to the muscles so they supersede the messages from my amygdala. Margaret shakes her head. Shouldn't you be checking with Dr. Pierce on any medical interventions? I'm 18, I get to make my own decisions. Dr. Pierce's pills haven't stopped my violent impulses. Why should I keep doing something that's not working? Good point, but his medications have improved your sleep in the last year. Sorry, Mom, he says with a sheepish grin. I was afraid you'd talk me out of it. I got on AutoWeb a year ago, stopped taking pills, and slept better. Margaret puts her hand on her forehead. I feel a migraine coming on. Henry feels her thought. The ground of her identity is dissolving like soil liquefaction crumbles city buildings in an earthquake. If your sleep is better, what can I say? Thanks, Mom. The split is badass AI. While Zandy hangs out with me in Berkeley, I get to hang with her in Rio. Margaret's jaw goes slack. Darn it, the psilocybin's got to go. You really expect me to believe my son is split, living in two places at once? Not a big deal for autistics to have two realities going on at once. On one channel, I'm walking on the beach in Rio, seeing, hearing, and feeling through Zandy's senses, and on another, she's doing the same here. His mom's eyes bug out. This Zandy? She's looking at me right now? She is, he shrugs. Don't you have the slightest? Her whole face wrinkles in disapproval. Concern for privacy issues with this split app? Henry closes. I know, for neurotypicals it doesn't fly, but for autistics it's no big deal. We can't make rigid boundaries in our minds like NTs. We don't run with that ego programming since we lack the hardware to execute it. When Henry was a sophomore in high school doing independent study, he jumped into the world of computers. Despite his autistic challenges, he was a natural. After all, his dad was a computer scientist at MIT. He couldn't regulate his body well enough to go to classes in person, but that didn't matter because the computer science teacher let him zoom into his classes. After Henry got tech savvy, his dad introduced him to AutoWeb. AutoWeb was a wonder to Henry, a portal designed for autistics by autistics, research students at Stanford's Artificial Intelligence Lab. Finally, autistics had a diagnostic tool that celebrated their intelligence. The entrance exam, as it was jokingly called, to AutoWeb was a co-created virtual world build. AutoWeb's sensing hardware mapped with such incredible accuracy and autistic's mental and sensory activity that it could create a matching virtual world. Henry would never forget the night he completed AutoWeb's entrance exam and met Clarissa, the super smart and sexy cyborg. He walked into Clarissa's cybercool office. She was smoking hot. His first question was, what's the worst mistake an autistic might make on his first date? In a monotone, first-generation AI voice, Clarissa advised, do not ask your date if you can touch her breasts. Henry found this so hilarious he laughed until his sides ached.
So John couldn't make it today, but Pamela wanted to go a bit earlier. Come on up, Pam.
Shorties.
Yeah, it's very adjustable. Just pull it down. Yeah. There you go.
Okay. Can you hear me? Yeah. I'm recovering from laryngitis, so hopefully I can get through this. We'll find out. And this is the story about a man, a very intelligent incel who hates women because they constantly rejected him, and so he combines his passion for roses and the occult and comes up with the perfect revenge. Roses were not Roger's only interest. He scoured the Bay Area looking for bookstores specializing in the occult. He found one tucked between a rundown office building and an empty laundromat on a narrow side street in San Francisco. Peeling gold letters stenciled on the front window read, "Little Shop of Horrors." Heavy draperies precluded a peek inside. The store looked abandoned, but a tattered placard on the front door read, "Open." Roger imagined a hunchback proprietor named Igor. Instead, he was greeted by a buxom blonde in a flowing purple caftan. "Can I help you with anything special, honey?" "No, just looking." "Well, take your time. We have a large collection of grimoires and spell books. If you find something you like, give a holler." Grimoires? Books on black magic, the dark arts. Enjoy it. Blondie disappeared behind a curtain while Roger slipped down the narrow aisle, crammed with shelf after shelf of vintage books. A faint smell of dust and mold permeated the air. The discovery of witchcraft caught his eye. Written in 1584, it was an Elizabethan expose of witches and witchcraft. Interesting. He added Grimorium Verum, which claimed to include a catalog of specific demons and how to draw on their powers. Now, wouldn't that be fun? Treasures in hand, Roger was about to cash out when a small, unassuming book caught his eye. He'd looked at that shelf before and didn't remember seeing it, but there it lay. It appeared to be very old. Inscribed on the stained parchment cover were the words Mysterium Rosae, the mystery of the rose. An intriguing title. He had to have it. Roger found the first two books historically interesting, but Mysterium Rosae was the holy grail. One look at the inscription on the inside cover convinced him of that. His hand shook as he translated the Latin. "Welcome, initiate. Herein lies the spells and potions necessary for the transformation of things human and non-human to other. It is the art of change. Enter at your own risk. Match. Ulrich Hildebrandt." Transforming humans to other? Roger had entertained Roger had entertained the idea that such an act might be possible ever since he stumbled across the story of Nerine, an Armenian girl who pricked herself in a cactus while watering plants. A few thorns stuck to her wrist. After removing them, her parents disinfected the wound, but it festered and expanded. Within a month, a large thorn emerged. Alarmed, Nerine went to the local hospital where the thorn was surgically removed. However, her worst fears were realized when, within a month, bigger thorns emerged in the same spot and multiplied. Researchers studied them and arrived at the conclusion that they were no longer of vegetative origin. The thorns were parasitizing Nerine, turning her into a hybrid of plant and animal. In other words, the poor girl was turning into a cactus. Cacti were the only plants with thorns. Roger envisioned something more beautiful. Why not a rose bush? If a girl could turn into a cactus, why couldn't a woman turn into a rose? In his trembling hands, he held a book that just might make it possible. Biology, zoology, and a touch of magic. Revenge will be so sweet. It was the first real laugh he'd had in ages.
Next up, Susanna Solomon, reading Josephine Montreux's Chocolate Shop. Feel free to adjust this however you like.
Welcome to my home in the chocolate shop, Josephine Montreux. We have the best chocolates in the world. Some of our creations are in the shapes of musical instruments: violin, oboe, and cello, even piccolo. Mademoiselle Bumpus is clock, but my absolute favorite, is the chocolate piano. It has black and white keys, and I play it naturally. At night, when the streets are quiet, I descend from my perch above the curtain, where I have a bed, a sink, and a WC. I come down when the steel grates are pulled across the windows, and I play. The others join in, of course. Our music may sound tinny to you, but to us, we're a complete orchestra, and the world inside our chocolate shop is filled with music: oboe, cello, 4 violins, and the piano. The other night, we filled the room with soaring notes and arias. Even Hattie Bumpus was chiming in. At that moment, Monsieur Froissart, the owner of the shop, opened the steel grates earlier than we expected, and we were exposed to the world. Madame Tartine, easing a melody from her cello, was the first to exclaim a swear word that is not found in polite company. Monsieur Concombre, mais oui, a cucumber, made a squeak and hid behind the spinach. All around me were squeals of alarm as we disappeared too slowly into the curtains. Monsieur Froissart was not amused. He saw us, placed one hand on his heart, and shrieked. Then he fell to the floor. Monsieur Froissart is a rotund man and quite fastidious. He wears English morning clothes, a gray vest, black jacket, sensible tie, black shoes, and gray trousers. At first, Mademoiselle Courgette thought he was dead. Had anyone from the outside seen him fall? Could we close the metal shutters? No, and no. The violinists were first. Monsieur Pierrot, the clown, and his children, fourchette, couteau, cuillère, and verre, fork, knife, spoon, and glass, all ran down the curtain poles and attended to Monsieur Froissart's head. Still, a group of vegetables acting as nurses were concerned that Monsieur Froissart might have had a concussion. They had to keep him awake, but if he were to wake up entirely, he would find out that his chocolate shop was filled with people, no matter how small. The gig would be up. We'd have to find a new home, and none of us wanted to take the metro, risk everything, and leave all the comforts of home behind. As for me, I played an aria from Mozart, while the ladies whispered into Monsieur Froissart's ears and the children tugged at his hair. His mustache twitched. Finally, Darcy, the piccolo player and youngest member of the orchestra, whispered sweet things, making Monsieur Froissart dream of romance. We all felt sorry for him not having a wife or girlfriend, so Darcy ventured carefully. The rest of us jumped off Monsieur Froissart's ample body and were climbing up the hem of the curtains when Monsieur opened his broad mouth and yawned. Darcy almost fell in. She skittered across the floor in time, finding her way to the drapery by the front door. She climbed faster than I did, hanging onto the fabric, and shot up to the head of the curtain. To my quarters, to my bed. I didn't have time to dissuade her, not that I wanted to. Esme, Monsieur Froissart moaned in his deep voice. He sat up, brushed off his hands, a surprised look on his face. Esme, he exclaimed again. Darcy and I, by now holding hands, suppressed a giggle. She was in no position to make a lot of noise, a single woman in a gentleman's bedroom, but we shared a look, a quick kiss, and she was gone. By the time Monsieur Froissart stood up, still groaning a little, we were all tucked away when the bell over the door chimed. It was Madame Bracouze in for her daily constitution. Bonjour, Monsieur Froissart, Madame sang, and he smiled. Our day had begun. Slowly and furtively, we took up our positions on the shelves and stayed quiet and still for the rest of the day, thankful Monsieur Froissart had not hurt himself. That night, we partied like teenagers. Some of us knew our limits. A thimble full of whiskey goes a very long way if you are small. As for Darcy and me, we continued our courtship until the wee hours, and we have, please excuse my indiscretion, no limits at all.
Next up, we've got Roger. Which one are you reading today, Roger?
The thief.
All right.
How's that?
That's good.
I'm going to read the whole story because I cut out 600 words to do so. I believe I can make 5 minutes. The sign on the weathered door read Dead Goat Inn. The inn sat on a lonely stretch in the middle of the road to King City. A club traveler tethered his horse and spent a moment watching and listening before entering the inn. Inside, a beefy man stood behind a short wooden bar mopping the bar top with a cloth stained red. An empty mug lay on its side on the bar. "We're closed," said the man. Nonsense. The sign outside said welcome. In the traveler's experience, most innkeepers were overweight, rosy-faced men who ate and drank too much of their own bill of fare and never turned away a paying customer. This man had a sharp look about him. His eyes darted back and forth, a schemer or a villain. "A pint of ale, a pint of your best ale," said the traveler, pulling the hood from his cloak. "I've traveled far and need a plate of stew and a bed." The barman considered the traveler's fierce black eyes, trim goatee, and long pointed ears. "As you can see, the fires are out. I have nothing to offer. A pint of ale. There's an inn not far down the road that's better suited to your kind." "My kind? What kind is that? A thirsty traveler weary from the road?" "You be an elf. 'Tis plain on the board of my nose. We don't see many elves these days. Just yesterday, a band of dwarfs came in from their silver mine. Those boys had a mighty thirst. They drank me dry, so I have nothing to offer. Try the laughing horse." "Ale," said the traveler. "You don't talk much. I thought elves loved to talk." "Perhaps that's evidence I'm not an elf. Besides, you're doing all the talking for the two of us." "How do you explain those pointy ears, then?" "I had an accident at birth. The midwife pulled me out by my ears, and they've been pointy ever since." "What about that ale? You're a tavern keeper, aren't you?" "What gave me away?" "Well, the sign at the door said Dead Goat Inn, and the kegs of beer and casks of wine. And here you are. The only thing missing is my ale." "Well, I call that circumstance. Much like your ears, quite circumstantial. I could be a thief in the middle of robbing the place, and then you walk in. The tavern keeper could be tied up in the kitchen. He could be on the floor bleeding from the blow of the head I gave him." "Is he dying?" the traveler asked, putting his hand on a long blade at his waist. "Who can say? He'd certainly need a brave soul to get past me and save him. They say elves are brave. By the look of that pig sticker in your sash, you must be a fighter, because that ain't no eating knife. As hungry as you claim to be, it looks like you're eager for a fight," said the barman. "You certainly are a worthy fellow. I'd like to oblige. However, I didn't come here for an adventure or a fight or soul saving. All I want is ale." You better let me see some coin first." The traveler drew a leather bag from the inside of his cloak. From the bag, he pulled out a gold coin. "This should cover the price of the ale, stew, my horse, and a night." "Lords and wizards, a coin of the realm. We don't see many gold crowns these days. Is there something wrong with the coin of the realm?" "Heavens, no. It's just that most travelers trade in common brass. There are more coins like that. Are there more coins like that in your little bag?" "What's in my bag is my business. Yours is serving ale." Could it be? It could be highly dangerous for a man alone to be carrying a bag of gold, unless, of course, he's an elf and fears fighters' elves. But you don't have a bow and a quiver of arrows under that cloak, do you?" The traveler pulled off his cloak and rolled it in a ball and held it in his left hand. He was dressed in leather and high thigh boots. Again, he put his hand on his dagger, his sash. "I have nothing but what you see." The man behind the bar drew a rapier from under the bar and, leaning across the counter, poked the traveler in the chest with a blade. "I'll have that bag of coins." The traveler leaped back, and using his cloak as a buckler, he batted the rapier to the side. The barman jumped over the bar, and blade on blade they fought. The traveler's quick moves allowed him to get inside the larger man's sword, slashing across the barman's beefy left arm and then deep into his thigh, into his left thigh. The barman howled in pain, dropped his sword. "You win," he said. "Take mercy on an old villain." "I take it you aren't the barman." "No, I'm a thief by trade," said the man as he tied a scarf around the hole in his leg. "What's your name?" the traveler asked. "My father called me Henry Stoneman. My friends call me Light Touch." "Oh, will you be all right, Henry? I've had worse. I didn't mean to hurt you. Well, these days I'm a little slow on my feet, but few men have beat me so quickly. You must be an elf. Only an elf could have beat me as you did. Leave what you want. Is the innkeeper in the kitchen?" "Yes." "Does he need saving?" "Well, heavens no, he's tied up, but I'll go untie him. He can wait. What I want is a pint of ale," said the traveler. "Will you join me?" "Oh, I'd be honored." Light Touch said, limping behind the bar, "What's your name?" "Robert. In King City, I'm known as Robbie the Elfman." "So you are an elf?" "Let's say you're half right." The advance payment of the crown to the innkeeper provided for a room and a pot of stew, and sitting by the fire, the two men ate the stool and drank ale and smoked tobacco from long stem pipes. The road can be dangerous for a wealthy man traveling alone, Light Touch said. What you need is someone who knows a villain when he sees one, a man who can fight back and back you in a fight. "Let's talk about that later," said the traveler. "What do you think King Gerald would pay to return his daughter Isabel?" "Isabel? He'd pay a fortune. Is she kidnapped?" "Not yet." "Here's half a crown. If you're going to go with me in the morning to King City, you'll need a horse," said the traveler. "I'll steal one," said the thief.
We have Bart Scott with The Window in the Tower.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I'm Bart Scott.
If you need to, get out of those.
How about now? This is The Window in the Tower. I'll read the first 2 pages. It is as if the old casement window mocks me. Its frame is encrusted with centuries of grime, rendering dim and gray the small light the glass allows to pass. In its youth, the windows would swing open to let in the crisp air and the sun's warmth, made all the keener by the height of the tower. Now the hinges are stiff with rust, the latches frozen with disuse. It is as if time had set out to seal the room for no outside effect. The accumulation of years and remoteness and distress creating putty to plug any connection to the world without. I can't complain about the room. I have a desk, my books, some quills. There is a bed that is comfortable as a man might need, but not large. The room is adequate. It is perhaps 20 feet square, but numbers are not my strong suit. If my head is filled with thoughts, there is room to pace, which is really all that I need. My physical requirements are met. I am provided with good food, clean clothes. I lack for nothing. I live mostly in my mind, and this room is a perfect shelter for that imperfect medium, the thing that drives me, that defines me, that is me. Yet despite the comfortable perfection, I remain restless. It shows in my writing. At first it was all milk and honey. My words dripped with warmth, with hope, with laughter, all the best things. My characters were cordial and funny, light on their feet if there is dancing to be done, elegant in dress and gesture. The pit played in perfect pitch with nary a discordant note, and any aura of high drama was subdued, subtle, and resolved with gentility. Yes, it was comfortable writing. I suspect that was what I was supposed to do. In fact, I don't really know if there were expectations, but the words rolled off my pen in a river of comfort. In time, the closed perfection of my existence became wearing. The automatic mot juste became a labored riposte. The cotillions of the past edged toward jitterbug, and the stately chamber music evaporated to be replaced by the discord of jazz. I don't know how the change started, perhaps in my dreams. The pastoral elegies that performed my nights with sage and rosemary became seared and dark, marked by the pungent odor of desiccated foliage. The lyrical melodies that danced across my sleeping mind stumbled and were lost. Instead, a waste of wicked words welled up. The dancing children adorned with garlands of daisies metamorphosed into cackling fawns. The clear skies with white clouds that were the cushions of the gods became gray, streaked with black clouds that smeared the horizon with portents. I don't know if either was truer than the other. The change occurred on its own, inevitably, without my consent or complicity, and the text became succinctly uncomfortable. So I gazed at, but not through, the obscured glass. As I brood about what might lie behind that window, my pen fills paper with words as if I have nothing to do with the process. I look down at the words. They are angular and angry, terse and tense. There are no flowers on the page, but thorns giving way to twisted tree trunks, transforming into a blasted landscape of shadow and industry. Every word has its utility. A pretty word is worth no more than the noun that slouches insolently in the shadows and threatens to pick your pocket. Indeed, in certain circumstances, the word that misbehaves may prove to be more useful than his fat, complacent cousin.
Excellent.
Here we have Rod Morgan, and which of the two are you reading today?
Hi, I'm Ron Morgan, and I've got two stories to give little snippets of. The first one is The Secret of Cedar Ravine. It was inspired by my real niece, Sky, and they live by the Cedar Ravine in Placerville. So, since she was old enough to walk, Sky explored the ravine from top to bottom, from entrance to exit. She was familiar with every tree, brush, shrub, and rock. She constructed a comfy floral throne to sit upon on hot days and dangle her feet in the cool brook. She named every sector, feature, and secluded site. Places to romp, create, relax and ponder, to sleep, to dream. Her most favorite, however, was the cozy little recess dubbed the Magic Hollow. Seated in the northeast corner was a smooth, egg-shaped stone, the color of damp moss. Her fascination with this particular rock and locale evolved from curiosity to sacred attachment. The next one is The Metamorphosis of Ananabu. For the first time since my journey began, I felt ill. I altered the environmental controls to increase the oxygen level and added extra vitamins and stimulants to my nutritional intake. It didn't help. Then the great metamorphosis takes place. In closing, she suggested that in light of my newly emerged consciousness, that I change my designation from Clone 32 to Ananabu, since my wisdom now belonged to the heavens. She explained that these were the ancient Mesopotamian gods of knowledge and the sky.
All right, now we have Dave with Super Holly Hansen.
Super Holly Hansen in Raiders of the Super Tube. Indiana Jones had a whip and a brown fedora. I had superpowers and a red cape. I stepped into the ancient chamber at the end of a death trap-ridden cave maze where archaeologists had scanned super grail high levels of superpower. As in, it could turn everyone within 50 miles into superheroes, or supervillains, or a 50-mile wide crater. They had frantically called for Super Holly Hansen, mightiest superhero on Earth, namely me. I sniffed stale air, tossed a few LED globes inside, saw ruin-ridden stone walls and a statue on a pedestal. This job needs background music. E-bracelet, play Raiders of the Lost Ark, the map room. You'll have to imagine that. My Wonder Woman-esque bracelet played the tune. Appropriate soundtrack, said Cal, the intellectual Critbird from my earphone, his Batman-esque resonance licking my eardrum. He was super brains to my super brawn, America's favorite movie critic, and my date at the latest Superman movie where I kissingly whispered the effect of every kryptonite color in his ear. For this date, I cradled him and pinched his body on my butt as I'd flown here, our capes mingling in Mach 1 breeze. Now he cautioned, Holly, this isn't a movie, be careful. You said that when poison darts and spinning blades bounced off me. My voice echoed, stone walls and high ceiling made for spooky acoustics. Boxing ring-sized chamber, statue and pedestal center, wall art too crappy for comic books. My soulmate said, and that's an appropriate description. Aim your e-bracelet at the runes on the pedestal, then read its translation. I sighed and read it. Riddle me this, my Batman. I am Muscle Crushius, hero of heroes. Challenge me, ye champions, and joyously despair. I hate mysterious riddles. I like silly. I heard the smirk in Cal's voice. What's the difference between an elephant and a plum? I smirked also. Their color. How are they alike? They're both purple except for the elephant. I'd hoped the runes would tell us how to safely release the stored superpower in there. Beware, Holly, it would break my heart to mentor another Wonder Woman. So cute, my bad boy worried about me. She's a comic book warrior. I'm a geek girl with a heavy lifting day job. What now? I replace the statue with a bag of sand that weighs exactly the same? Show me the statue with your Cape Class camera. The stone statue of a muscle man wore a furry Speedo and sandals, several inches taller than my 6'1", bulging, sinewy, hairless thighs. Maybe the sculptor believed in manscaping. 8-pack abs, twin warhead pectorals, not a speck of fat, burly broad shoulders sorely needed to support gorilla bodybuilder arms. Oh, frack! The statue's right arm slowly, ominously raised an enormous broadsword. Cal, the statue's moving and turning Caucasian fleshy tan. Did I step on a secret stone? Cal spoke faster. Likely your super strength made him hit critical mass, or rather the sword for its radiating superpower. I stepped back. Maybe I could jam it into the pedestal and put up a sign saying, King Arthur, keep out? Free! Crowed the muscle man. At long as last, Muscle Crushius be free! His voice echoed through the chamber. His head was Norse god, square chin, high cheekbones, sky blue eyes, long, wavy, gleaming golden hair. He smiled down at me and brandished his sword like a caveman about to disembowel a saber-toothed tiger. Statuous warrior woman, thou shalt not steal mine power! He leaped at me. I hate the superheroes fight when they first meet cliché. I ducked. The sword whooped over my head. Uh-oh, a freshly cut clump of my super strong blonde hair drifted in front of me. Maybe Lash, my barber, could even this out with super laser scissors? To be continued.
Next up, we have Marlene. She is going to read us some of Soul Singer.
soul singer. I stumble down the street. 3 glasses of Barber's hooch are maybe one too many, especially in this humidity. The moisture hangs so thick you need swimming lessons to walk around. A kaleidoscope of lights, music, and voices speaking 20 different languages swirl around me. It's impossible to focus. I'm tempted to go with it. This is my night off, and don't I deserve a chance to let loose? Yes, I do. But the voice of my driver, Roddy, plays in my head, repeating his words when he dropped me off at the entrance to Alta City's crowded entertainment sector. Have fun, Tara. Just don't be an idiot. Between one step and the next, I take a deep breath and center myself, guiding power into my gut to temper the alcohol. Better, I think, as the swirling steadies into flashing lights and reflections off the clubs, eateries, and gambling dens that make up the center. The crowd becomes a friendly mob of many-shaped, like-minded souls looking for a good time. And the music settles into an accompanying beat to the joviality. Alta City attracts the galaxy's wealthy young, occasional middle-class young, and the poor young, all looking for a chance to escape the doldrums of their lives. Like blood in the water, this mix then attracts the sharks who prey on it. Being an idiot really is not a good idea. In the end, in the street, a gang of elephantine Matorians begin to dance, their massive bodies surprisingly graceful, even as their long trunks probe each other in places and ways that rile the nearest onlookers into ecstasy. Ahead, a long-necked Ratharan steps out from Hoshi's kinetic gambling room and turns, heading my way. He spots me, assessing me from head to toe as I approach. He seems to approve of my smooth green skin and shiny red and green head feathers. His gaze lingers on my humanoid body, and I move with slow deliberation, emphasizing curves already shown to best advantage by a snug silver bodysuit and boots. He adds a flirtatious smile when he finally looks into my eyes, his head tilting in invitation. That's when his own eyes, such lovely long eyelashes, widen in astonished recognition. He freezes, unsure of his next move. I return his smile and hum a few notes as I pass him. He nods and continues on his way, having forgotten all about me. Getting lost in a crowd is a rare joy for me. My banthy features are obvious from the distance, but my face reveals my father's human bloodline, the Delgan branch of humanity that settled in the Orion sector. Bantha-Delgan hybrids are common as dirt. The unforgiving Banthy ghetto on Banta Prime were the products of the aggressive Delgan army and the Banthy women they claim as spoils of conquest. The few like me who escape get a second glance wherever we are. Even so, that's not what made the Routhen freeze when he recognized me. No, that's just me, Tara Rodan, the soul singer. All music moves our souls and alters our emotions, willing or unwilling, for good or ill. My music begins where normal music leaves off. It turns you into my toy. If it were up to me, I'd use it for good. But the boss men direct me and the general directs the box men. I turn the masses into a toy for the Empire. But they don't know that. They only know that I make them feel good, and they adore me. Roddy, who was Earth human, calls this type of manipulation bred in circuses. Says it was from a period in ancient Earth's history when corrupt rulers used state-sponsored entertainment to keep their masses distracted. In this time and place, these club owners use my talents to hype the night crowd into buying more stimulants. Small minds is what I say. It galls me, but yeah, it's my night off. I resolve to ignore it. At the entrance to Crazy Sue's elegant emporium, I pause at the mosh pit to lift my feathers off my neck in preparation for jumping into the fun. Before I can jump, though, my skin tingles hard, alerting me to approaching doom. I step sideways just in time to avoid a full-body meetup with a whirling tangle of arms, legs, and blonde hair. A woman's body sails past me, slamming into a parked motorcycle before sliding to the ground in a limp heap. She came from inside the club, and an approaching Doppler of shouts, breaking glass, and a deep rumbling tell me her assailant isn't done with her. I swing back, and no wonder people are screeching and scrambling out of the way. A full-grown Tehethor, 9 feet tall if he'd bother to stand up straight, with arms he must have borrowed from the rainforests on the Rita and Moon. Thunders toward me. His head is bigger than the girl on the ground. Whatever buzz I'd retained from Barbara's hooch evaporates. Tahithers are dim-witted, but they know right from wrong. Spying a trash can lid amid the street's debris, I pick it up, hurl it sideways into the monster's chest, and place myself between him and the woman. She moans, trying to stand. Maybe if I give her enough time, she can escape.
All right, next we have Carl Katie with Not Letting Go.
Moved it back up to my height. Well, in a lot of ways, science fiction gives us a permission slip to write about our own times without the controversy. And this story, Not Letting Go, is set on the Pacific coast, south of San Francisco, north of Half Moon Bay, in an area called Mavericks. Mavericks is basically known as for a surfing contest, but it's just a little extended hump sticking out into the Pacific. And 100 years from now, Mavericks has become a peninsula, and it's really the seat of a fading artist community, which is led by an artist named Hans. Peter led the smaller group to the site of the trouble. A large section of cliff had caved in. 2 homes were in shambles, and where the third house had stood, furniture and house materials were scattered, even onto the rocks below. Dear God, I hope everyone got out all right, said Hans to no one in particular. A stocky, middle-aged man with black hair stepped forward, nudging a small boy before him. Most of the McDonald family is missing. Maybe Mauve here may be the only survivor. The frightened 5-year-old gripped a plastic bag with fierce determination. It was filled to the top with dark, loamy soil. Hans knelt to hug him. I'm so sorry. How can he cope? He's lost his family. Mauve raised the bag with both hands. I saved my garden from the storm. I'm going to plant strawberries. He dropped to the ground, shaking. It's a memento of his family, his hope for the future. Hans picked the boy up and stroked his hair while he addressed the displaced families. Who can't return to their homes? Every person raised a hand. Thunder sounded, followed by a downpour of rain. Hans straightened to his full 6 foot 6 inches, his silver hair glistening with each flash of lightning. You can all stay at our house if you need to. Our home has plenty of room. If we need more, we have some cabins in back. Less than a minute later, the ground shook, followed by a roar. Earthquake? He ran to the crest of the hill and watched the half-mile strip of land connecting the Mavericks Peninsula with the shore sink rapidly into the waves. Amputated from the mainland, Mavericks' lifeline to the greater world was gone. Holy God, Mavericks is dead, said Hans. My garden is not dead, cried Mom. You're right, son. Your garden is fine. Hans' eyes scanned the new channel of water. Terrifying, but mesmerizingly beautiful. Peter shivered. Things haven't been this bad since California's Climate Day. Who can forget February 21st, 2121, asked Bev, the day the California government fell apart? Hans frowned. What's past is past. We need to concentrate on what's happening now. He looked thoughtfully at the boy.
All right, now we have Corey Pelka. Which of the two will you be reading today? Tell us about it.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, love it. Yes, very good. I'm Corey Pelka. I'll be reading an edited version of The Forgotten Quest of Madgrin Brubane, wherein a dwarf remembers his duty, his lines, and where he left his hat. A smile is not complicated, even for a dwarf. It starts with a contraction of the zygomaticus muscles, raising the corners of the mouth, which in turn invites the auriculus oculi to lift the cheek muscles, crinkling the area around the eyes. The result is known to stimulate happiness. Madgrin Brubane hadn't exercised his auricularis oculi in over 20 years. He certainly hadn't used his zygomaticus for the last decade. At the moment, his scowl was so deep, vermin could be living in the crevices. That's not to say he didn't have all the right bits and bobs to produce a smile. His mouth, hidden beneath his dark Brillo pad beard, was wide and left dimpled. A high-ranking fairy once described his lips as luscious, until she discovered that she wasn't that high-ranking on his list of women, which might account for his oft-broken, oft-repaired nose. Atop his high cheekbones sat eyes the deep blue-green of a poisoned dart frog. If he'd taken an occasional shower and waxed his eyebrows, he might have been described as ruggedly handsome. No, it wasn't his physiology that prevented him from smiling. What prevented Madgrin Brubane, seventh son of Broodhelm the Dark, king of the Illyrian dwarves, was his banishment to the human realm. Banished to Santa Monica, he lamented. All sunshiny and cheerful. It wasn't banishment, a voice chided. It was an honorable quest. Madgrin looked across the table at his companion, Daphne the Diminutive, daughter of Blaug the Mountain Eater, king of the dragons. She burped, smoke leaking out the side of her mouth. They were ensconced in the dark recesses of their usual booth in the Suds and Duds. He looked around the empty pub. An atmospheric river storm had descended on the city. Ah, Daff, he sighed. I'm glad you decided to come with me. I'd be miserable without you. You are miserable, she replied. I came with you because my dwarf size made me an outcast among the dragons, just like your too tall stature made you an outcast among the dwarves. A quest to avert war seemed like a worthy adventure. He uncapped the bottle of tequila and refilled her shot glass. The jukebox whirred. Patsy Cline warbled strands of crazy. Madgrin sank deeper into the blood-red leather seat. This whole quest was crazy. A loud bang startled him out of his reverie. A tall woman with flaming hair burst through the front door like a bombed cyclone seeking a safe harbor. Her sapphire eyes landed on Madgrin as she blazed a path to his booth like a heat-seeking missile. Madgrin Brubane, guardian of the boundary, I invoke your quest in my time of need. It was delivered as if to cue him for a forgotten line. The air swirled as she took another step toward him, her left eyebrow arched like an angry cat. He'd seen that look before. You are Madgrin Brubane, the only dwarf ever to defeat Alaktheus Jakaras, champion of the giants? She paused. In the last Illyrian war games before the boundary closures. Alaktheus, now that was a name he'd never forget. Well, yes, that would be me, he replied. Truth be told, the real victory was drinking him under the table after the at the festivities afterwards. The woman paused. I remember that. Quite impressive, actually. She took in his disheveled state and the near-empty tequila bottle. I see you've continued to hone that particular talent, Brubane. Now get your hat. I'm in a hurry. To be continued. All right, now we have Judy, the fabulous outfit and the story to go with, The Incredible Wheel of Misfortune.
I'll just give you one pose before I actually get started. Because one of the characters in this is 300 years old, and she has a penchant for white gloves, fun clothing, and posing. 3, 2, 1. You're on air, intones camera one in a no-nonsense baritone. This emanates from a small device programmed with old vids from the 20th century. Earth, that is, including episodes of I Love Lucy, The Price is Right, Hollywood Squares, Laugh-In, and Wheel of Fortune. Voluptuous Vix, Pleiades, a hot blue luminary, past her prime, adjusts long white gloves on all 8 of her arms, while the makeup crew dusts her cheeks with iridescent glow-in-the-dark powder. Nary a wrinkle or waddle spoil her appearance, thanks to nips, tucks, and numerous genetic alterations. At 300, her flawless skin is legendary, even on super high-definition screens. Elmer Bixler, her co-host, fusses with a spectacularly weird 3-foot-tall swath of fur towering atop his 9-foot-tall rotund frame, an amusing version of a comb-over. Elmer daubs his watery, bulbous eyes. Jello-bellied joviality make up for his photogenic deficits. Dense stubble casts dark shadows on his squarish, triple-chinned jawline. Yet loyal fans love him. History buffs often compare his shadowed chin to that of the 37th American president. Although when flustered, he fades in and out, becoming translucent, the Solarian's equivalent of blushing. Clamor for reality-based game shows continues unabated despite intergalactic travel. Some things remain a mystery. The mismatched pair come alive as the spotlight hits them, and the gigantic holographic game board. The fate of tonight's winner is hidden beneath the implacable rainbow squares. Greetings, Elmer booms in an unctuous voice. The audience roars, beaming in from all corners of the galaxy. Vix sniggers, smiling like a lighthouse, and blows kisses to the crowd who cheer even louder. Elmer shrugs. Tonight marks our 3,000th episode, and I can tell you it is my pleasure to be your host. The mellifluous lie slides over Elmer's lips. Vix ushers in tonight's trio of contestants. The first is Flamina, a non-binary bombshell with an ability to switch gender at will. An eloquent equine with 4 enormous feet who vocalizes in a lilting, poetic style and guffaws like a donkey. Ee-haw! With a fashion sense from Earth's Carnaby Street era, Flamina has spotted skin and can curl into a tight ball like an armadillo. Flamina spits like a camel when aroused and harbors animosity towards Vic. Contestant number 2 is Lucius Loki, a nerdy Sheldon Cooper type, a prodigy who speaks in rhyme and annoys everyone. Rail thin with one huge, bulging eye and ears like an elephant. He's dressed in a t-shirt and white sneakers, and his giggling infects others with narcolepsy. Contestant number 3, Cornelio Copernicus, the dragon variant reptile, is a mind-reading shapeshifter who changes colors in a cyclical pattern and favors both feather boas and floppy brimmed hats in neon colors. While the audience is hooting their approval in anticipation of the big reveal, they're eager to learn the details of tonight's anniversary show prizes. Rumors have been swirling throughout the galaxy. Will the winner pick a 2-light-year vacation on Mars? A moonlight cruise around the 4 moons of Jupiter? Or perhaps a custom-made spacesuit courtesy of Gucci Galactic? Everyone has been sworn to secrecy. Thank you.
It looks like Susan couldn't be here, which brings us to our last reader of the night, M.P. Smith with Ever After. And there's one that you do the last bit.
Hi everyone, I'm MP Smith. My story's called Ever
Close to
After.
the mic.
First time I've ever talked in front of
Yeah, you gotta have really close to it.
Hello. Okay. Hello. Okay. Now I'm in the square. Damn hot flashes. Peggy swore as her legs tangled in the sheets. She threw off the covers, turned to see where she was, and stopped with a start. A middle-aged man in jeans and a crumpled sports coat sat in a chair near the window, smiling at her like he did back when they were in college. His black hair had silvered, but those Irish blue eyes still caused her heart to flutter. Her thinking was fuzzy, but she worked it out, still staring at him. At least she remembered to close her mouth. "It is you, isn't it?" He nodded and smiled. Oh, that crooked smile. Why did we ever break up? She could look at him forever, but the glare from the overhead lights, the mechanical bed, and the various tubes and cords attached to her vied for her attention. What happened? Where am I? And why are you here? The last unknown made her smile and feel crazily at peace, like she was supposed to feel and understand all of this. Am I dead? Is this heaven? She put her hand to her chest. God, a stupid hospital gown. Hope I didn't show off my backside. As she struggled to sit up and try and get a better look at him, her hand grabbed the back of the gown, pulling the two sides together. Her still slim body made it possible for it to fit. Almost. "Ah, don't worry about that," he said. "I saw the goods back when we were in school. They were magnificent then." He spread his arms wide. "And I'm sure they're wonderful today." "Doubt it, Robert. It's been a few decades since college. Time and, shall we say, gravity have taken their toll." His smile beamed like the old days, and it broke her heart all over again. "What are you doing here?" she whispered. "Funny thing, Peggy, me girl," he began like a true Irish storyteller. "Here, come sit down next to me." He patted the adjoining hard plastic chair. "I didn't bite when we were in school, and I still don't." Peggy slid off the bed, and with tiny steps as if her shoelaces had been tied together, she penguin walked the beeping monstrosity of wires attached to her over to the chair next to his. A mass-produced number in electric orange guaranteed to never allow anyone to get comfortable. He stood and gave her a long hug that felt so good and so familiar. She had trouble catching her breath. "He always had this effect on me. Or is there something the matter? I need a fairy tale right now, not if the truth is going to break my heart." "Tell me the funny thing," she said as they sat next to each other. She felt her eyes glistening. "Well, I found you on that Facebook thing. Found out you were single again. As am I," he said with more eye twinkling going on. "So came to see you. When I got here, I'd heard you were in a bad accident. I found the hospital, and I've just been sitting here talking to you, reliving our past." He paused. "We had good times, didn't we, Peg?" She smiled in answer to his question. "And now you've woken up," he beamed, as if he were personally responsible for her awakening. "I feel pretty good. You look pretty good, too." She looked skeptical, and he laughed. His melodic tenor had lowered to a deep baritone. She looked at the bruises on her arms and thighs. "I don't think so. And I think a toothbrush is in order," she shuddered. He jumped up while he asked, "How about a sip of water?" To her nod, he plucked a small paper cup from a plastic tube stuck on the wall by the sink. He filled it and handed it to her, his hands lightly caressing her, and then sat again in the garish orange chair by the window. She sipped and looked at him for a long time. "Where have you been, Robert?" "All your life?" he joked. "No," she laughed, "just the past couple of decades." He whistled at the unbelievable march of time. "Texas." "Texas? Yeah, what's wrong with Texas?" "Nothing, I like Texas. Been there several times. I just thought..." She stopped short. "What?" he asked. "You were such an Irish soul. Thought you'd never leave the state," she finished lamely. "Besides, you love the beach, and Texas is too hot for you." "Nah, I got used to the heat, and I live near the ocean." "Really? That's nice." "Yep, Galveston." "I've been there, did a little research for an article." "I know, I read it." "I was sad you'd been in Galveston and I hadn't known it. We could have met for drinks. That's when I decided to find you." She made a face. "Still a teetotaler?" he asked. "Yep," she smiled. "Never liked it. You liked it too much, but coffee would have been nice." "Funny thing." "Another?" Peggy's eyes danced, remembering their conversations from so many years ago. "Sure, that's me nerves coming out, but it's ironic. I was talking with your daughter. The car accident." He nodded to Peggy's bandaged head. "The driver who hit you had been drinking." He shook his head sadly. Peggy gasped. "Oh no, was anyone else hurt?" She looked around. "Where is Carrie?" "They're in the cafeteria taking a break. You've been out for 2 days. I said I'd watch over you for a while so they could grab a meal." "Thank you. Hope they haven't been too worried about me." "She's your daughter. Of course she's been worried." "When they get back, she'll see I'm fine." "Until they get back here, want to fool around in your hospital bed?" He raised his eyebrows suggestively and pulled at her hospital gown. She slapped his hand away, laughing. "No, I do not. I see you haven't changed a bit." "I try not to," he sighed. The conversation comfortably lulled. The only sounds were the high-pitched whine from the fluorescent bulbs overhead, and the incessant ticking and buzzing from the bedside equipment and the rolling stand that she brought with her across the room. He took her hand. "You always had the softest hands." She shrugged. "It's the lotion." "And you always said that." "Truth," she nodded. "You once told me you didn't want to get old lady elbows." She giggled. "I'm giddy. I'm acting like a fool, but oh my, it's good to see him." Funny the things you remember about someone, he said with a tinge of melancholy. Voices from the hall made them jump. Uh-oh, here they come, he said. Better scoot back to bed. Why? I want them to see I'm fine, she protested. They'll see that in a moment. Go on, I'll tell them the good news. She shuffled over to the bed, dragging the medical stand with one hand and clasping the gaping back of her gown with the other. He whistled in appreciation. She laughed and gratefully laid down among the tubes, wires, and beeps. Her body ached, and she realized how tired she was. Oh, Robert, you were the one. She closed her eyes, breathed hard, surprised a little walk had taken so much out of her. The one what? He asked softly, as if from a distance. The one who? She was so tired. The one. Her family came in and saw her smiling. Her daughter leaped to hug her. Mom! Carrie, Peggy said groggily, her voice a little softer and slower than usual. Carrie burst into tears. Her joy was obvious at hearing her mother's voice. We were so scared. I'm fine, hon. Sobbing, Carrie put her head on her mom's chest, and Peggy smoothed her daughter's hair. It smelled like the ocean. Peggy closed her eyes and remembered when Robert's hair had smelled like the sea. Carrie and her husband Todd fawned over her, and their little girl climbed up on the bed to give Nana a hug. Peggy was overcome with fatigue and happiness, but she needed to remember something. She opened her eyes and asked, "Where's Robert?" "Who?" Carrie asked. Todd asked, "Robert? You mean the doctor? I don't know if his name is..." "No, an old college friend who was just here. We sat in those chairs and caught up." Gosh, it had to be 25 years since. Carrie put her hand on her mother's forehead. "I don't think you had any visitors, Mom." Peggy snapped, "Of course I did. Robert was here. My first..." "Oh my," she found in a hot flash. "He was the one who got away," and she laughed. "He came from Texas to see me and heard about the..." She stopped when she saw their blank faces. Carrie shook her head. "I'm sorry, Mom. No one's allowed on this ward except family. It must have been a dream, or maybe the car accident." She nodded at Peggy. "You hit your head pretty hard." Peggy stared across the room until she felt dizzy. The crumpled water cup was on one of the orange industrial chairs puzzled her. "What happened?" Todd said, "Someone ran a red light, plowed right into you. The other driver didn't make it," he added softly. Anguish spread across Peggy's face, and a new, louder beep sounded from one of the bedside machines. A nurse hurried in to silence the beep and noticed Peggy's drawn face. "I think we've had enough for today. Tomorrow she can have a longer visit and perhaps even take a little walk." Carrie kissed her mother and picked up her little girl. The nurse got between Peggy and her visitors. She held her arms wide as if herding farm animals and ushered them toward the door. As they left, Todd said, "An old boyfriend from Texas. Weird story, huh?" She had a pretty good knock on her head. "Shh, she'll hear you. Hey, didn't the other car have Texas plates?"
Well, good job, everybody. We got some lovely writing and some lovely speaking. So thank you, everyone, for coming today. This was a lot of fun. Nice, small, intimate group. And if you haven't already gotten your posters, get some more snacks to take with you, mingle and say hi and all that. It's been great. Thank you.